My name's Joe Cortez, President for the College of Healthcare Professions, South Texas, and I'd like to start off by thanking Governor Abbott for being here today and for his focus on broadband access as well as education. On behalf of Eric Bing, our Chancellor, the students, staff, faculty, and alumni of the College of Healthcare Professions, I'd like to welcome you. Along with Charter Communications, Mr. Todd Baxter, Ms. Julie Shields, representatives from Connect the Future Texas, Mr. Jose Luis Adame, Mr. Blake Powell, Mr. Walter Baum, as well as our distinguished guests, Senator Eddie Lucio Jr., Senator Chuy Hinojosa, State Representative Ryan Guillen, as well as representatives from the Office of State Rep Terry Canales. It means a great deal to the college to be able to host you as you are recognized as Connect the Future Texas's broadband champion. As a Valley native, born and raised, I can share that traditional classroom education does not work well for all adult learners. In rural RGV, like many other communities across Texas, our learners need to have the flexibility to work, raise their children, take care of their parents, and deal with anything else that life has to throw at them. At the College of Healthcare Professions, we balance that need for flexibility with structured 2-day-a-week in-class learning for students to be able to master their professional skills, but also give them the flexibility they need to be able to complete the rest of their week's work online and at home at their convenience. Now, this flipped delivery system would not work without access to reliable broadband internet services, so for that we thank you very much. Because of this delivery method, during the pandemic, the College of Healthcare Professions never had to shut down. We actually graduated over 3,300 healthcare professionals and placed them with over 2,100 employers across the state of Texas. One of the thousands of examples of this is Zoraida Ramirez, who is now working with one of our community partners at Doctors Hospital at Renaissance. When Zoraida came to us, she was a young working mother, taking care of her young son, just trying to figure out how to live day by day. Now she's a medical assistant graduate, earning a good wage, like I said, at one of our community partners, Doctors Hospital at Renaissance. Her story would not have been able to happen because she grew up from rural Peñitas. And out there, connectivity can sometimes be a problem. So for your work in that area, again, we thank you. In fact, a lot of stories would not be possible without these type of connectivity and efforts. An independent study conducted by Rice University this past fall concluded that 78% of our Hispanic learners graduated, and 80% of those graduates were placed in their field of study, with 74% of those students being first-time college students. Again, broadband access plays a critical part in the role of the success of our students and our community. As president of the College of Healthcare Professions, South Texas, but more so as a Texan and as a father, I am really excited at what the future holds for a truly connected Texas. Governor Abbott, thank you once again for all of your work with broadband and your work on Texas education as a whole. Welcome to the college.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Todd Baxter from Charter Communications.
Thank you. I'm Todd Baxter, Group Vice President for Charter Spectrum and also a member of Connect the Future Texas, known as CTF for short. CTF is basically a broadband coalition of entities and companies across the state of Texas who advocate for broadband across all corners of this great state. And, CTF believes that, the way to get this done is to partner with the policymakers, the shareholders. We have partners that are from businesses and economic development entities and healthcare, law enforcement, agricultural interests. It's a very wide berth of folks that are interested in this. And the one thing that we knew that it was important to work with the governor, the ladies and gentlemen from the legislature that are here, and in working with them, we found solutions. And in fact, it was about a year ago that Governor Abbott announced that he was going to make broadband one of his top priorities. And it wasn't just idle talk from Governor Abbott. Governor Abbott used his constitutional authority to make broadband an emergency item for the 87th legislative session. A lot of us up here know, and for those of you who don't know, when the governor takes a stand like that and makes it an emergency item, it gets a lot of attention and it gets moving. And he partnered with a lot of the folks behind us here, the Speaker, the Lieutenant Governor, the House, the Senate, chairman in both chambers, and they passed, with Governor Abbott's leadership, an incredible package of bills, passed several pieces of legislation that are going to have a massive impact for Texans across the entire state. And because of his efforts, we've seen some incredible results. And as a result of his efforts, we are proud at CTF to present Governor Abbott with the Broadband Champion Award for Texas. And we really want to thank you, Governor, for everything that you've done.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, thank you to Todd Baxter. Thank you to Joe Cortez, as well as Eric Bing, and especially to the College of Health Care Professionals for hosting this event today. I really want to add my gratitude for the students who surround us today. I think, speaking for all of us, our primary focus is to make sure that we provide a pathway to prosperity for the next generation. And one of the best ways to do that is with college programs just like this. I just got to visit with these students earlier, and I told them all that they are going down a career field that will ensure their employment, because there's high demand in our state for people who are going to be skilled in healthcare skills, which we desperately need in Texas now. So we need those employees. To get those employees, we need colleges like this to prepare those employees. I also want to thank Senator Hinojosa, Senator Lucio, and Representative Ryan Guillen for being here. Listen, this is a team award. I'm the recipient of it, but the fact of the matter is this was earned and deserved by everybody in the Capitol who focused on that emergency order. Sure, the governor declared it to be an emergency order, but it still requires effort by both the House and the Senate to pass legislation that fulfills the urgency that we felt that we had in the state of Texas to make sure that we delivered broadband for colleges like this, for regions across the state. And there's a reason for it. Broadband is essential in a modern-day society. It's essential for educational settings like this or other higher education institutions. It's essential for high schools and even for elementary school students to be able to interact, do their homework assignments, to do research projects, whatever the case may be. It's also essential in business for the customers of a business, for suppliers of a business. It's important for the healthcare field. You know, an area that we worked on this past session is the increasing use of telehealth and the use of broadband access, especially in rural areas where people who may be located far remote from a hospital or medical care setting. They are now going to be able to tap into getting health care through telehealth because of increased access to broadband. Increasing broadband is also important for areas of emergency response and our law enforcement to be able to act more swiftly, and to double down for those who live in rural Texas in general, whether it be rural parts of the Rio Grande Valley or in the tip-top of the Panhandle. They have less access to broadband than those who live in urban settings. It is important that everybody in this state is going to have access to the broadband they need in order to interact in today's society. And the goal that all of us had in the Capitol, the goal that we achieved in the Capitol, was to pass legislation that would deliver on that promise. The fact of the matter is there are too many Texans without access to broadband. So we prioritized legislation that would fix that. And once again, I want to thank Senators Hinojosa and Lucio, as well as Representative Guillen, for their leadership in making sure that we passed this very important legislation. Among the parts of the legislation, we created the Broadband Development Office to prepare a state broadband plan. That assignment was given to the state comptroller. The comptroller says that plan will be issued in just 2 months, in the month of June. To pay for it, the legislature appropriated more than $500 million to ensure that we would be able to deliver on this promise. And then we also created the Governor's Broadband Development Council to monitor the progress of broadband development, to identify barriers to broadband development, and to analyze how statewide access would benefit things like economic development, education, emergency response, and healthcare delivery. And broadband development is, as you heard earlier, is particularly helpful, even essential, for programs like CHCP. I'm going to reiterate some of the things that were said because they're so important for people to take away from this press conference today. The flexible way that students learn here allows them to be educated on their schedule. As you heard, during the pandemic, CHCP never shut down, and they graduated over 3,300 students from July 2020 to June of 2021. And it placed those students with over 2,100 healthcare employers across the state. Think about that. In a day and age when we see so many colleges graduating people who do not have a job or get a job afterwards, they graduated students who were placed with over 2,100 healthcare employers. This is a model for how broadband and innovative education can prepare the workforce of the future. So no matter what corner of Texas you live in, you will soon have access to fast and reliable broadband so that our students will be able to learn, so that our businesses will be able to thrive, so that you will be able to visit a doctor through telemedicine from the comfort of your own home. The future is online, and in Texas, we are bringing that future to absolutely everyone. So thank you again to everybody here. Thank you in particular for what you're doing at this fabulous college. Thank you to these students who are learning here, who will be serving in communities across our state. And once again, thank you to the legislature for getting this important legislation to my desk. With that, we'll be able to take a few questions.
Governor Abbott, Ron Whitlock reports. You talk about flexibility. The city of Brownsville had to take matters into their own hands. The city of Brownsville is developing a scaled-up broadband network without the help of big telecom companies. Do you, Governor, have any preference of how the state of Texas gets fully wired? One, is it primarily the role in the private sector? Two, do public-private partnerships work best? Or three, do cities roll out a gigabyte-high-speed broadband network on their own effectively, taking the view that broadband is a public utility?
Well, listen, bottom line is broadband is important for everybody. As Todd Baxter will tell you, the way it's delivered is different for different people. In most urban settings, broadband is readily available, and I would categorize Brownsville as an urban setting. Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, etc. Are urban settings, most of which have good access to broadband, with some exceptions in those locations. A primary goal of the legislation that we passed, a primary goal of the $500 million that we provided in funding, is to make sure that those with no access to broadband whatsoever were going to be able to get it. Those who live in rural settings, those like what was mentioned in Penitas, they were going without it, and they needed it. That said, there are multiple platforms that are available to make sure that those in Brownsville will be able to get that, and the best person to be able to tell you about that is Todd Baxter. Hold on a second. We're not done yet. Todd Baxter.
No, I appreciate that question because, in fact, Brownsville is very well served and ubiquitously served by the private sector right now. And so I think a really good question that should be asked is, should government money be being used to overbuild the private sector to build redundant networks when, in fact, local governments should be looking to partner with the private sector who already has networks in those towns? And so I would question whether that is actually a good use of taxpayer dollars. I think that's the question that should be asked.
Governor, I would change the topic on Operation Lone Star. We've learned that it's costing taxpayers roughly $2.5 million per week to keep National Guard soldiers deployed per your order. I've spoken with dozens who feel that their presence down here across the border is nothing more than a show. Do you think that's a good use of taxpayer dollars?
So first, it's regrettable that the state needs to even incur the expenditure of money at all to secure the border. As we all know, securing the border is the responsibility of the federal government as assigned by the United States Constitution. But also, as we all know, the Biden administration has completely abdicated its responsibility to secure the border. You can look at the way we had record low crossings across the border just 2 years ago, and then look at today, and we have record numbers of crossings into our state. And then look at what the Biden administration predicted would happen in less than 1 month from today. On May 23rd, with the lifting of Title 42, according to the Biden administration themselves, they said to expect about 18,000 people coming across the border a day. Do the math, and that turns out to more than 6 million people a year, about half of whom will be coming into the state of Texas. We will have crossing across the border into the state of Texas more people in 1 year than the largest city in Texas, the city of Houston. There is no way that local governments or the state would either be able to assimilate, to pay for, or deal with that massive migration that we would see. And as a result, the Biden administration is forcing Texas to take unprecedented action. On the second point, listen, I want to emphasize something. You may visit with dozens of people. I have been on the border with our National Guard multiple times, and I've visited with hundreds, if not thousands of them. And they tell me, sir, we appreciate your leadership in leading the National Guard. Know this, the National Guard supports your mission on the border, and they are proud to serve the state of Texas.
What's the way forward, though?
Next outlet. Do you agree with the stay of execution issued by the court for Melissa Lucio? Do you intend to grant clemency or intervene in any way?
Well, so this is now in the hands of the courts, and as you probably know, what the court did, the court granted a stay on the execution, returned the case back to the lower court for further evidence, as well as perhaps a trial to determine whether or not there is innocence. And so it is now back into the hands of the judicial system, and it will not get back to me until the judicial system concludes its process.
2 more questions.
Go ahead.
I do have a follow-up to the border, but I do want to stay on this. The city of McAllen, I used to be ever mayor here, has a pretty ambitious program that provides public Wi-Fi. We've also covered how Hidalgo County has been able to go to areas like Penitas and Los Evinos. With that money that you have mentioned, is there any upgrades that this is going to be specifically affecting this particular area? Because I know you're at Hampshire Finette, you got the similar, almost probably the same award yesterday. That's my hometown, so.
Yes. Really? Yeah, small world. It was a great school that we were at yesterday. But listen, here's the deal. The goal is multifold. The primary goal is to make sure that those who have no access whatsoever to broadband will be able to get it, and most of those people live in rural parts of the state of Texas. We're not oblivious to the fact, however, that there are people who live in cities, and it could be McAllen, it could be Brownsville, it could be even Houston or Dallas, that may not have access. Our goal is to close the digital divide, period. And we're providing already more than $500 million to help achieve that goal, and we are also providing the platform. One thing that's taken place as we're talking right now, and will continue over the next 2 months, is a, quote, mapping by the comptroller, where the comptroller is going through the analytical process to determine each region in the state of Texas that should be on the receiving end of this. And we need to let the comptroller finish his process of doing that mapping to decide where their priorities exist.
Last question.
If I'm able to kind of follow up on what we had discussed about the border, I believe it's your website where we're asking for donations to help with funding for the busing process over to D.C. Now, I remember when I had asked, someone had asked about the cost. This was something that wouldn't be any additional expenditures. I don't know if you have the idea of the price tag on that, but why are we at the point where we are asking for donations from Texans?
Well, I'll tell you exactly why. First, I need to tell you why I made the announcement of what we were doing. I was with a group of local officials in Uvalde, and officials ranging from there to Del Rio to other segments along the border. And they were telling me these stories how on a daily basis the Border Patrol had been instructed to drop off a lot of migrants, could be dozens, could be hundreds, in those cities where the cities had no capability whatsoever to be able to handle those migrants. And as a result, they were just walking around town. And I think it was Uvalde said that they were busing people to San Antonio. I said, well, y'all shouldn't have to take on that responsibility. The state of Texas will do that. And instead of busing people to San Antonio, we'll just bus them to Washington, D.C. And in doing so, we assumed a cost that would occur. But as soon as the announcement was made, we were overwhelmed with phone calls, with letters, with requests about people providing buses, people driving buses, people paying for buses. And we got to thinking, if people across the country are so eager to participate in this, we should put a website link up and let them participate. And as soon as we do that, the donations have come in. It likely is going to mean, I haven't seen what the number is, but it likely will mean that it will be no cost to the state of Texas for providing these buses.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all very much.